Hi, Friendship West. The Be Made Whole Counseling Center announces Reclaiming Mental Health for Women and Families. This exciting new grant will provide personal counseling, mentoring, classes, and I like to say layers of love to help women connect with their power and purpose. Beginning on March 14th for 8 weeks, the first group will get started. If you live in the city of Dallas, have been impacted by COVID, that's all of us, and if you know you deserve a good job, you're ready to move on up, check us out. We've got laptops, hotspots, technology, books, and everything is online, so it's safe. If you want some power, some healing, and financial breakthrough, please join us. Applications are now available online. Please contact Ashanti Davis by email at adavis@friendshipwest.org, and she'll get you connected. Thanks.
Hey, what's up, fabulous family of faith? Did you know you can make charitable donations to your church while you shop on Amazon? That's right, Amazon Smile is a way that you can support Friendship West every time you shop with Amazon. You'll find the same amazing Amazon you know and love with the added bonus that Amazon Smile would donate a portion of the eligible purchase price to Friendship West at no additional cost to you. All you have to do is visit smile.amazon.com and sign in with your Amazon credentials. Select Friendship West Baptist Church Dallas as your charity of choice and start shopping. Remember to check out smile.amazon.com to generate your donations to your church. For those of you who like to shop via the computer, here's a tip. Add the bookmark to make it easier to shop at smile.amazon.com. And if you're like me, you like using your app on your phone, simply open the Amazon shopping app, navigate to the main menu, that's the 2 bars, tap on the settings, and then select Amazon Smile. Once you do that, you can select Friendship West Baptist Church as your charity of choice, then follow the on-screen instructions to turn on Amazon Smile in the mobile app. Once Amazon Smile has been activated in your app, your future eligible app purchases will generate donations for Friendship West. Unfortunately, the tablet app is not yet supported, so use your phone or your computer. So remember, smile.amazon.com to generate donations for your church.
Oh, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord at Friendship West Baptist Church. Listen, the reopening is on and popping, and we are excited. We can't even hide it that you're coming home. You're coming back home. So we want to make sure that, again, we're safe and responsible, and we keep you healthy and well. So here's what we're asking you to do. On Mondays, beginning at 3:00 p.m., we will open our website to register for worship that following Sunday. Everybody has to register because, of course, we're having to, cap how many people can come in to the worship auditorium for the worship experience. And so I'm asking you, as much as I don't like to do this, it's for us to look out for us. So please register beginning at 3:00 p.m. on Monday. If you don't have access to a website or you need some help, call the church, 972-228-5200, and we will walk you through the process. Please understand that the registration process closes at 3:00 p.m. on Wednesday. And so Monday, 3:00 until Wednesday at 3:00. Register for our worship experience, and we will look forward to seeing you. Please recognize that we're going to maintain social distancing. We're insisting that everyone wear a mask. We're going to be free in the spirit, and yet respect in the spirit protocols that will keep all of us safe. And so I'm excited. I can't wait to see you. You got to know that we are prayerfully planning worship experiences that will be on and popping. At the same time, they're going to be safe because we're determined to keep everyone healthy in the name of Jesus, because that's faith that works. God bless you. I can't wait to see you.
Friendship West family and friends. We, the Gap Ministry, welcome you to this worship experience. It is our hope and desire that you become inspired and empowered by what you hear tonight. So to those of us that are on our way and to those of you that are just in the way, we greet you in the matchless name of Jesus. Let us go to the Lord in prayer. Dear Heavenly, Holy, and Righteous God, how we love you, how we love to call upon your name. For you are our God, and besides thee, there is no other. So, Father, we thank you right now for what you're about to do in this space. Let your Holy Spirit fall fresh, Father, upon those that will speak tonight, Father. We thank you for their courage. Father, we thank you for their tenacity. We thank you for their perseverance, Father. We thank you for allowing them to expose things that may not be right. Father, so we give you glory, we give you honor, we praise you, and we lift your holy name. Fall fresh, have your way, in the blessed name of Jesus. Amen.
Good evening and welcome to night 2 of the Broughton-Wells lecture series, where this year's focus is the gift of the Black woman, promoting hope, providing healing. Remember that this lecture series centers to focus the stories of Black women and girls by creating a dynamic learning community focused on education, mobilization, and organization through the church and community, training us to become advocates for issues related to the well-being of Black women and girls while unpacking womanist theology. The centering of the voices and stories of Black women and girls is critical, and tonight's topic will do just that. Tonight's topic is forgive me. Tonight's topic is the holy hush, the mental and physical well-being of Black women. Please be advised, as we do know that this topic may be triggering for some, as it does deal with reproductive rights, maternal health, and what God has to say about the well-being of Black women. For that reason, we do have the prayer line open, as well as licensed therapists on standby. Again, please tonight, on whatever social media platform you're watching us from, please engage in conversation, as we will be monitoring to take questions for our panel on this evening. Again, welcome and thank you for joining us.
Good evening. My name is Christopher Marks, and I'm here to talk about premature births and women's rights. See, what happens, the reason why I'm here, when we're in our Black community, we are faced with the silent killer. Everybody in our community, you know somebody that's been affected by premature birth. The complications of premature birth in the Black community is very heavy. First, we're talking about infant mortality, talking about depression, postpartum depression. So we're out here to advocate for women's rights. One of the bills that will be coming up in Texas legislative, hopefully, will be to understand the task force that will be studying the effects of premature births on Black women itself. So I'm here to advocate for that. I'm here to let you know that men are part of the journey of fighting for women's rights with women's rights, and together we can get it done.
That part of how we get our liberation is certainly the way in which Black men come along as co-conspirators, as allies in the work that we do here, because it can't just be Black women sounding the alarm. It has to also be the brothers who are providing support, who are standing by and allowing us to do the work that we do. So thank you so much for being here. We thank Alpha Phi Alpha for the work that they do. And so we hope we bring many more Black men along the way who can also be a part of helping us achieve the goal of making sure that Black women and girls certainly have the ability to have places and spaces where justice, peace, hope, love, liberation, and healing can be lived out. I'm so excited about tonight, and I want to first introduce our panelists on tonight, and I'm really just moderating tonight. I will be moving out of the way. They are the experts and have so much to share. This is a conversation and a topic that we have not discussed, particularly in the Black church and here at Friendship West, because we believe in justice for all people. We want to have this conversation, very open dialogue around reproductive rights as well as maternal maternal mortality and maternal care. And so I want to introduce my guest first, and then we will move on with our program. To my immediate left, we have Reverend Dr. Irie Session, who is the co-pastor of the Gathering A Womanist Church. She is no stranger here at Friendship West. She has preached and taught to us many times. And so thank you for being here on tonight. On behalf of Dr. Haynes, we welcome you to this panel. And then to my immediate right, we want to welcome Marsha Jackson, who is the Executive Director. Jones, I'm so sorry. Marsha Jones. I keep saying Marsha Jackson because we have Marsha Jackson over at Shingle Mountain that we love on. So Marsha Jones, just know we're going to start loving on you too. So Marsha Jones, thank you. She's the Executive Director of the Afia Center. We are super excited to have her here for the first time at Friendship West. We hope it is not her last because she has much to share with us and we want to get all that we can. And then to her right, we have Dr. Stacy McCormick, who is the Scholar in Residence at the Afia Center. And then back to my far immediate left on the other side of Dr. Session, we have DeAndrea Willis of the Afia Center. And I'm sorry, DeAndrea, what is your title at the Afia Center again?
Birth Justice Organizer.
Birth Justice Organizer. Y'all know she's going to lay it down for us tonight in terms of how we're going to be made whole in this process and how we as Black women will center our narratives and talk about the ways in which we make sure that we survive the moment, not just childbirth, but how we survive the moment of just being Black women in America. And so one of the things as we get prepared to move into our program, I have in front of me is a birth stool of the Asante people. And when we think about the birth stool, the womb carriers who give birth, physical birth to generations, I also want to think about womb carriers that give birth to vision, that give birth to justice movements, that give birth to activism and advocacy efforts, that advocate for just policies and laws to make sure that we have what we need to survive in this country. And we are the ones who really move those movements. So we are thankful for those who may not give physical birth, but they certainly give birth to what we need to survive in this country, not just survive, but we want to thrive. And so we remember our ancestors in this moment who did just that, who had the privilege of having children stripped away from them, like Fannie Lou Hamer, who had a hysterectomy against her will. And so we want to remember and call those names, and we do this work because of them. And so I'm so excited to move out of the way in a moment so we can get to questions and really learn what is reproductive rights, because oftentimes our view and understanding is very limited. So we're going to open that up and talk about that tonight and many other things. It's going to be organic. If you have some comments, questions, please place them in your Facebook chat, place them in YouTube chat, and we'll try to get to those and make sure we can address it. And this won't be the end. This is only the beginning of the conversation. So for now, we want to go to a video, and after the video, we will move into our conversation.
Hello, I am Reverend Danielle Ayers, and I currently serve as the Pastor of Justice at Friendship West Baptist Church, as well as I give leadership to the Broughton-Wells Center for Gender Justice. We want to now invite you into an intimate conversation with Cheryl Prelo and Dr. Michelle Norfleet as we talk about an issue that's so critical and vital to our community. However, we don't often discuss it and talk about it because it's so personal and intimate, but it's one we must have, and it's one around maternal health. So we'll just kind of invite you into this conversation we're going to have, and we pray and hope that we will say something that you might in yourself receive some healing, some hope, and that you would join us in our efforts to bring equity to healthcare, that women who decide to conceive, carry, and give birth to children can do so in a way that's healthy and wholesome for them. They can be made well and remain whole in the process. So let's now turn to Dr. Michelle Norfleet. And so for the purpose of this being a sister conversation, I refer to her as Michelle, though we know that she has her earned PhD. But this is just sisters having a conversation about a very real topic that we need to have a conversation about. So Michelle, why don't you just start by maybe telling us your own personal story, a little about your personal story about your journey to motherhood.
Well, just in short, it started in 2017. Me and my husband decided, we got married in 2016, decided to start, have a family. And so I got pregnant, and, the whole excitement of conceiving and all of that. And, long story short, I miscarried. And so, for those who have suffered a miscarriage, that first one floors you because you're open, you're open before you get pregnant. Your hopes are at the highest point. And so when you see that positive pregnancy test, you're on cloud nine. But then to go to the doctor and, be told that the baby isn't viable, and then you go through the process of miscarrying, that floors you. And so basically that happened. I was told, oh, these things happen. This was the first thing, the first red flag. Now in hindsight, I see, that these things happen, and, you wait a few weeks, a few months, and just try again. No mention of, mental care, physical care, anything like that. And so, of course, we tried again, was successful, and I suffered an ectopic pregnancy the second time. And so, of course, that pregnancy is not viable. And so now I'm saying, no, wait a minute. First time, okay, I got over that. But then the second time, this is something different. And so, the doctor, again, was very passive in the aftercare. And then it happened a third time. And so me and my husband sat down, we had a conversation, and, at first I'm not thinking of any, implicit biases, any racial, injustice. I'm not thinking that way, because all I'm thinking about is, I'm losing these babies. But, eventually we changed doctors. We got with someone that, I felt like was more into holistic care, and, just a minor procedure changed the whole outcome. And we were able to successfully have a live birth with Paisley. And so, but again, in hindsight, knowing to ask the right questions and knowing to take your maternity health, your reproductive health in your own hands, and know the right questions to ask, knowing when there are red flags, when healthcare professionals are kind of just being passive about your care, that's very important. Also, making sure that your support system has that same knowledge, because when you're not in a mental state to ask certain questions, you want to make sure that your support system, spouse and beyond, because your spouse is going through, their own trauma as well, just making sure those who are in your corner know to ask certain questions and to advocate for you, and just being knowledgeable about the things that happen when you are trying to conceive, and just asking the right questions.
Yeah, so thank you for opening up and sharing that, because we know that, this is such an intimate topic. But I think so many Black women in particular suffer in silence, and not understanding what happened to them. Is something wrong with me? Did I do something wrong? Right. And so, Cheryl, Dr. Norfleet brought up something in her story, and I'd like for you to address it perhaps in your journey to motherhood, and this notion of perhaps what happened to her, the physical aftercare was not even an afterthought. It wasn't even thought about. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about maybe how the healthcare system treated you in the process and your journey to motherhood. You can tell us what you experienced, and why it's so important for us to give attention to medical care in the process.
Okay, sure. Again, thank you for this opportunity to have this conversation. My journey to motherhood was not traditional. Just a little bit of a backstory. As a woman, I had many surgeries due to fibroids, and didn't even think about what that would do later. When I got married at an older age, we tried to conceive at an older age, and we were having challenges, and we learned that because of all the surgeries that I had, that my tubes were blocked. So that meant we needed help getting the egg and the sperm together. So we were able to kind of work through that, and that was great. Delivery and my experience in the hospital was quite a different experience. Fortunately, I did have an African American female OB-GYN, which she was wonderful. I went in to have the girls. I had to have a C-section. I also had another procedure, the same right after the C-section. I learned the next day that I had lost like half of my blood, and they had to do a blood transfusion. My doctor, she came in to see me, and she asked how I was doing, and I said, I can't really sit up without being lightheaded. And I said, and then, my food, I can't eat what what they've given me, and I've asked for something else, and they wouldn't give it to me. So she looked at the order. She said, you are not supposed to have this food. I'm going to make sure that is changed. I couldn't get that request to happen. Immediately after she left the room, I would say probably within 30 minutes, I had another unit of blood next to me, so I started to feel better. But I still was very, very weak. I needed help just doing basic things. You know, after surgeries and things like that, they want you to be able to get up and move around. But I could not make it to the restroom on my own. I called and I asked for help. They wouldn't help me. If my husband wasn't there, I couldn't get to the restroom because I was just too weak. So that part of the experience was really, really troubling, that they would not listen to me when I said I physically cannot do this. So I had twins, we had twins, and they were very, tiny, so they were in the NICU for a couple of days to get them adjusted and be able to maintain their heat. But I was still struggling because of the 2 procedures that I had in one day. And I received a call in the middle of the night. I don't even think my husband was there at the time. And I was told, Mrs. Prelow, if we don't release your children from the NICU to you, then you're going to be charged $4,000 a night for your children to stay in the NICU. And I said, but I'm not ready. I said, even my doctor said that I'm not ready. And again, I did not get any help. And so I'm just there trying to figure out what to do. So I just said, okay, just bring my girls down to me. And so then I had to call my husband, so he would come and he spent the night in the room with me, with the girls in their, I'm gonna call them bassinets, but I know that's not what they're, at the hospital. And that was just kind of how they were kind of released to me. I physically was not ready to take on that responsibility by myself. And then when it was time to be released, so I work in healthcare. I've done it for over 25 years, and I worked for this health system where I knew there was a particular program that was in place when mothers gave birth, that when it was time for you to leave, that they would do this safety check on how your the car seat was actually installed. So I asked her that because what I did for the organization, I actually knew the director, and I helped them with the program and get that implemented. But I was told, no, we don't do that. And I said, well, I know that you do this because I know it's a thing. They wouldn't help me. At that point, I was in tears because, we have twins. We just want to make sure that we're going to transport them home and we're going to be safe. I had to call the director of the program at the time and tell her that this is what I'm being told. She said, Cheryl, don't worry about it. She goes, I will make sure someone comes to help you. So she made that happen, but only because I had to call her. I felt like my doctor was very attentive to my needs, and we purposely wanted to have someone who looked like me because I felt like she would listen to me and she would actually hear me. But that was not the experience that I had in general with everyone else at the hospital. It was really disappointing. I was happy to be gone, but I did not feel as though I was recognized, and they would believe me when I said that I was not strong enough to take on caring for the babies yet. I wasn't ready for the girls, but they just didn't listen.
Yeah, and thank you so much for sharing that. And I think for me, it's always heartbreaking. And I hear these stories quite often from women who tell it in secret, right? So it's almost like, let me just kind of tell you in this corner over here what happened to me. And I think when we look at more broadly, is that it's how we're viewed in society in terms of just Black women in general, right? That we're super women, that we don't need help, that our pain is not what we say it is, and like you'll just push through it, you will be okay. Or that we can be dismissive, like you're saying, sure, like, hey, I need help, and they're like, well, we're not coming. No. Just to be, and whether that's implicit or not, I think sometimes it really is the lack of empathy that people have toward Black women, and really just not really seeing our full humanity.
For the vulnerability and the transparency of Dr. Michelle Norfleet and Cheryl Prelow, we give God thanks for their narrative. And we thank God for the fact that they were able to give birth to to Cheryl, her twins, and to Sweet Paisley. So thank you for your testimony that in spite of when we're not seen and heard, that God still covered you. So thank you for that. So, Dr. Session, I wonder if you might ground us theologically why we need to have this conversation, why the Black church needs to have this conversation, and just take a few moments to center us theologically around this issue.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this opportunity and for those testimonies. As a womanist preacher and practitioner, this subject is very important to me and to womanists everywhere. One of the tenets of womanism is that we are concerned about the survival, the wholeness, the wellness, the thriving of entire people, right, male and female. And so when we talk about what we're going to talk about tonight, it is right in line with what we believe and how we go about doing our work and our ministry. And so as a womanist preacher, of course, I want to ground whatever we do theologically. And so the text that spoke to me about this, Reverend Danielle, is Micah 6:8. Right? And I know many of us are familiar with that text, but let me just go ahead and read it, right? So it says, God has told you, O mortal, or O human, what is good. Mm-hmm. And what does the Lord require of you but to do justice and to love kindness and to walk humbly with your God. And so I began thinking about, and I want us to think about, what is justice, right? So justice is a primary attribute of God. It is maintaining the right relationship to the poor and the destitute. It's rescuing the weak and the needy and delivering them from the hand of the wicked or the oppressor. Now, in the Hebrew, there's a term used to describe justice, and it's called mishpat, M-I-S-P-H-A-T, and that refers to creating or maintaining equitable, fair, and harmonious social relationships. Mishpat suggests that every human being is created in the image of God and therefore has the same inalienable right to abundance, to wholeness, and to freedom from oppression. Now, that means that no one group of people has more of a right to these benefits than another. Now, I want to lift up an idea of wholeness, this idea of wholeness. See, I see wholeness as wellness, which means that Black women have a God-given right to experience wellness. Unfortunately, there is more than enough research that reveals significant disparities in Black women's wellness. Black women have the highest rates of poverty. They earn 63 cents for every dollar that a white man makes. Nearly 20% of Black women have no health insurance, and they die 4 times as often as white women from pregnancy-related causes, regardless of their income or educational status. So as a people of faith, if we are to take seriously, and I know you do here at Friendship West, Micah 6:8, then we would know that we have a responsibility to do justice. That is to do whatever we can to level the playing field so that every human being, including Black women, have opportunities to experience wellness. The sad truth is the church has historically been derelict in supporting, in advocating for, and ministering in ways that promote Black women's comprehensive wellness. Reproductive justice is about doing just that. Because U.S. healthcare systems failed to address racial and gender health disparities, Black women went into a room and figured this thing out. You know what happens when Black women who are about it go into a room, right, to try to figure some things out. The term reproductive justice was coined by 12 Black women in June of 1994. And it combines 2 phrases, reproductive rights and social justice. Reproductive justice is a strategy for taking on all the systems that harm and oppress Black women. It's not just about a woman's right to terminate her pregnancy. That is the misnomer that we have. But let me say this, but if we really dug into our history, we would know that many an enslaved woman in order to save their children from growing up enslaved, would, as a form of resistance, put her child aside. That's a phrase that can be understood as terminating her pregnancy. Crystal Webster, a historian, shares this story, and I'll end with this story, of Miss John Little. In 1841, escaped her enslaver. Prior to escape, her enslaver found out that she was going to escape, but he also found out that there was another woman, an unnamed woman, who had set her child aside, which was his offspring. He beat Miss Little, trying to force her to tell the identity and the location of this other black woman, this other enslaved woman who had set her child aside, but Miss Little refused to do it. And so what you have, and eventually Miss Little escaped. And so what you have is two women who were resistant to oppression, one by running away and the other by setting her child aside. And so when we think about doing justice, what I want us to understand is that it is so much deeper and so much nuanced than we have been thinking about. When we think about black women and we think about our health care and our wellness, it's included in that Micah 6 and 8 text.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Session. That was an excellent grounding for us to start our conversation. This is going to be very, organic, and we'll throw some questions out there. And of course, how we do it as women, if someone says something we need to respond to and dig into, we'll do just that. So let's just start with, you started touching on it, but if we want to your point, Dr. Session, you said reproductive rights is not just about a woman's right to choose. So maybe we can start off by let's unpack so people can know what are reproductive rights, and why is it important for us to be informed about and organize around reproductive rights. And we can just, let's see, Ms. Marsha Jones, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I was hoping we was going to start with DeAndre, but I'm our Dr. Stacy because I'm a fill-in. I'm just a filler. But I'm really, to hear you speak, Dr. Sessions, it just touched my heart, right? Because I don't get to hear that a lot. And I feel like Miss Little because that's my role in life. That's what we do. We do what we do at the Athea Center, and I'm often, I'm above shame, so you don't get to shame me. Come on. But church folk try to shame me a lot. I have church folk who say stuff like, are you sure that God is pleased? Yeah, I'm real sure that me and God, because me and God just talked about this morning, so we good. And I feel like that, sometimes. And also I know that I tell people all the time, you have got to be out of your mind if you think that black women were letting their children be born into this world, into this that they were being subjected to. So thank you for that. That really, touch my heart, because I don't get to sit in this space a lot, especially in a church. Churches try and ostracize me, right? So, but anyway, reproductive justice, when we talk about reproductive justice, and also thank you for lifting up how that term have just so been misused. It seems a little bit more palatable when you say reproductive justice instead of saying abortion. But that's not what it is. It is, but it's not. It is making sure that folk have the right to parent. And that's just not women. That's just not traditional, what we see as womb holders. It is whomever decides that they're going to get pregnant, no matter what label that you have put on their name, that they have the right to parent. So reproductive justice, it means that you have full bodily autonomy to parent in a way that you want to parent. It means that as two men, two women, two non-binary, two whomever it is, 3 or 4, they have the right to family. But they don't only have the right to family, they have the right to family with the resources resources that they need that enables them to family. And that means equitable access to health care. Not just equal access, but equitable access, because a lot of folk can fill out for health care, but they can't afford to pay for it. It can come out of their paycheck, but they can't afford to pay the copay to go to the doctor or the medicine. But having full access to that, and also it means that you have the right to not parent if you choose not to. And you also have the right to have the resources to not parent. But if you so choose to parent, you have the right to parent in a way that it is culturally sensitive to the way you parent, and also you have the right to parent and your children not be killed by state-sanctioned violence. So reproductive justice is also a part of Black Lives Matter.
Yes,
it is also a part of police brutality, of the killing of Black folk. It is also a part of the over-criminalizing of Black bodies. That is where, because when you take my son or my daughter, you take my way a right to parent. Trayvon Martin's mother was denied the right to parent because her child was killed by state-sanctioned violence. That is just how important reproductive justice is. Reproductive justice is making sure that everybody has the right to vote and have access to voting rights. Reproductive justice means that you don't supposed to be forced to live in environmentally unclean places where if you should have that child, just the fact that the community that you're living in, that child can be born with diseases, can be born with things that will go generation after generation. Ask people who were born in West Dallas, Joppy. I don't know what I'm going to be faced with. So far right now I'm okay, but I was born and raised in Joppy. We know what happens in places like that. Reproductive justice is when people are forced into those kinds of positions, and that is not supposed to be. Reproductive justice also talks about it is ending reproductive oppression when we use people's ability to parent or not parent to capitalize on that ability. So reproductive justice is not what you hear on TV. It is not. You need to sit down and talk to some Black women if you want to know what reproductive justice is. And it is maternal mortality. And I'll end with this. In a state like Texas, where your governor and all of his cronies have said that folk don't have the right to make choices for their bodies, but in that same breath had the audacity to feel proud about passing legislation that allows for a woman to have 6 months of Medicaid when the data says she needs 12 months if she's expected to live and her child is expected to live, to decrease maternal mortality. Giving somebody 6 months when they need 12 months is like throwing me in the ocean 12 feet away from the where you need to get out of the ocean at, and throwing me a 6-foot rope. I'm gonna eat, unless I can swim real good. I'm literally going to drown. I'm going to die. So 6-month Medicaid meant absolutely nothing when they needed 12. And so you cannot force me to have a child and then not allow me the things that I need in order for me and that child to survive. And so that's like what reproductive justice is.
Thank you. Amen. Right. Amen. Yes. I don't think anybody needs to add to that. But so I want to, because Ms. Marsh, you did say something that hit me, and I want Dr. Session, if you will, respond to this, because you were saying how oftentimes you're not welcome in these spaces, right? And so I do want to pause, because our pastor is here, our senior pastor, Dr. Haynes, is here, and we so appreciate and love him because right, he doesn't just preach and teach about being a co-conspirator ally of women, of Black women, but you see that evident even here, right? And he allows Black women, even on his staff and in leadership, to really lead, right? We're not tokens, that we have full autonomy, to do what we need to do to bring these issues to bear. So we thank him for that. So talk to us, though, about what do Black churches need to do to make sure these spaces are open up, because the women are in the churches.
Yeah, I would say take seriously the experiences of Black women. Take seriously the experiences of women, right? Listen to the women. Engage them in conversation. Don't just assume you know what their needs are, but ask the questions and be open to hearing the answers, right? And I think that's the first thing. And since you brought up Dr. Haynes, I'm a pastor. Since you brought him up, that's one of the things that I noticed about him many years ago and respected about him, that he listens to Black women, and he takes what we have said seriously. Not just, and when I say take seriously, what I mean is when you hear something, when you talk to a black woman about whether it's reproductive justice, whether it's about health care, whether it's about sexual abuse, whether it's about the biblical text, right, and how black women and particularly womanists enter it through a different way, that you not just listen, but you implement strategies and you engage in dialogue with women to develop these strategies, right? So that's the beginning part for me, Reverend Danielle, is listening to black women, and then two, implementing, putting into action strategies that they give you, because we got the strategies.
We
just
do.
listen.
Right,
And
right.
Dr. And trusting black women. Trust black women.
Yes,
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So, DeAndre, I like your title, Justice League, Birth Justice League. Can you tell us a little bit about what you do at the Afia Center? Because I think you do amazing work, so I want the people to hear what you do.
I do a lot,
Yeah.
okay?
We black women, that's our mantra.
So I can say like how I started, and I think it'll kind of intertwine with what I do, right? So I was led to the Afia Center proximity by Ms. Marsha here, all right? And I think I really found my place at the Afia Center sitting on, being a part of, not being a part, but a visitor to a panel like this during Maternal Health Week. And I can remember being pregnant and learning. I knew about maternal mortality, but didn't quite know about it. And it was a panel like this that it really hit me because I was pregnant. And I'm like, dang, I don't want to die. And I got to figure it out. And even when, you know, thinking about like the church, because I am a church baby. And, you know, talking to like some of the women in the church, and they just like, oh, just call your insurance, you'll find somebody. And so even doing that work of, but I need somebody black. I need somebody that look like me to help me through this delivery, because I have to make it back to the baby I just had 18 months prior, right? So that still didn't work for me. And so just doing some homework and talking to other women that is in the birth work and in just part of the Afia Center at that time, I learned that like, okay, I have to be that change that I need to be. And so I started with just learning about maternal mortality and becoming a doula. So I'm a full spectrum doula, and in that I seen that it's beyond me being there on the side of her as her doula. It's more so me really fighting and advocating for young folks to be able to have the birth of their choice. And it was conflicting with me being, you know, raised in the church. Like, of course, church people don't like to say the abortion word. Church folks don't like to talk about sex outside of marriage or having babies outside of marriage and all this good stuff. I'm in my 30s, so people my age, that's what we did. That was life for us. You understand? So we had to live life through judgment and shame. And so again, I'm like, okay, I have to go beyond, you know, just being a doula. And so me and Ms. Marsha here, we talked about what birth justice was. And so birth justice is really being able to advocate for people to birth with desired outcomes the way that they want to birth. And I look at it when I do the work because I am strong in my faith. I'm grounded in my faith. And so I adopt the Christ-like model, and that is harm reductionist and meeting people where they are. And that's just how I have to do it. And so even with our doula collective, we doula through whatever reproductive choice that them people, that birthing folks need at the time that they need us. So if that's through abortion, infertility, labor, postpartum, we're there. And so that's pretty much like what birth justice is, along with the policy piece of it also. So being able to, you know, fight for those rights and bills and making sure those things are covered and fighting for expansion of Medicaid and all of that. The beauty of the Afia Center is that we have people that able to do bits and pieces of it all, and I don't have to hold it down.
Right.
So, but that's pretty much like what we do. That's a little bit of it. It's new. Birth justice is maybe 3 years old.
It's been around, but we've really been hearing about it for about maybe 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And so We building our program. It's been amazing because I'm now seeing myself outside of just being a doula. It's like, okay, I was looking at the video and I'm much like the ladies that spoke, like, okay, well, if I'm gonna have to birth in the hospital, I need an all-black team. But when you get there, you realize that they're working in a white system, and so it don't help you at all. You know, and so it's like, okay, Danielle, you got to go outside of being a doula. You got to probably be a midwife at this point. And so now I'm, really looking at what that journey may look like for me as a midwife, because we have to do something.
Yes, thank you. I knew you did some great work, and I wanted you to talk about that, because also that you're rooted and grounded in your faith, and oftentimes people find a contradiction, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think it's good to hear your story and your narrative, because that's why we're here to talk about it, but also to hear how we entered the space. I wanted people to know you for that reason. So I want to talk about, we've talked about maternal mortality rate. We know in the state of Texas, Black women, 11% of live births, I think 27% of maternal mortality rate. So Dr. Stacy, can you talk to us about the importance of data collecting, storytelling, the importance of us getting that information, and then what do we do with that?
Yes. Thank you so much for that question. I would be remiss if I didn't enter my own story into this conversation. I came to this work having gone through infertility and then having gone through stillbirth of twin boys, and then ultimately having a daughter who was born prematurely at 26 weeks, and then ultimately having a son. And I saw multiple times the way healthcare fails Black women. And I was going through this experience when I was a graduate student. And so when we think about the ways and who this touches, it's no respecter of class, no respecter of any type of social position. When you are a Black woman in these spaces, and when you are a differently positioned person, whether it's a gender expansive person or anyone who is going into these spaces for care, you are at risk because these systems are not designed to protect us. And so I was drawn to this work too through narrative, because as Ms. Marsha said, we need to believe Black women, we need to listen to Black women. And I just want to enter Toni Morrison into this conversation, because when you look at Beloved and you look at that novel and set this journey of having taken her child's life because she did not want her child to grow up in slavery. When we think about the complexity of what it means to be a Black parent in this world, we cannot approach this through a kind of moralizing, singular view, because we are a multifaceted people, and to be a Black parent in this country and to be a Black parent in this world means you make a different set of calculations for yourself. And so when I think about my work in the academy, one of the things I knew is that I couldn't stay there. I couldn't stay there and do that work and say that I'm working in the space of justice, because we know, as Fannie Lou Hamer tells us, no one is free until everyone is free. And so we have to do that outreach. So the storytelling work and the data collection is more than just about a kind of academic project for me. And I think about our colleagues and partners, Dr. Allison Tomlinson and Dr. Helen Zimba and Kiana. Well, I'm gonna make you a doctor today. Right. Kiana Arnold, Deandra, as well as Ms. Marsha and all the folks at the Afia Center, we're all invested in this work to amplify the voices of the people most marginalized, because that is where the work happens. But rarely, and because these spaces are so fraught with shame, we don't have these conversations. And so for the first time, we'll have people come into this space and say, I've never talked about this with anyone before. And I think that was also what drew me to storytelling and narrative, because when I had my first stillbirth or that miscarriage, I could not talk because people didn't want me to talk about it. They wanted me to get over it. And so I would talk to myself. I would journal. I would write. My dissertation was on Black female bodies and pain. So I was like, y'all gonna let me talk about this one way or the other. And so I felt like this work is so necessary. And so with the data collection, one of the things I just wanted to mention is we talk about the slave archive and the way the historical archive basically silenced enslaved voices. And so I'm thinking about J. Marion Sims, who's quote unquote the father of American gynecology, and the stories that he told about his experiences working on and developing a repair of vaginal fistula. And he never mentions, right, the pain or the experiences of the enslaved women upon which he performed these procedures without anesthesia. And their voices are largely lost in the archive. But I was thinking about the fact that even in modern time, when we think about the medical record, the same power holders are writing the record. And so those stories are still being lost to the archive. All of the stories we've seen and heard today, those aren't the ones that get treated with authority. And so this work is largely about that. And so our first iteration, we call it the Livable Black Future Storytelling Project, because we don't want to just talk about the trauma. We want to talk about what it means to listen to Black women and gender expansive people in envisioning the future. And so we are also shifting our attention to people who are formerly incarcerated, to talk about carcerality and state-sanctioned violence on people who are still in that kind of complex of Black bodies and property. And so really what this also centers on is we have to disentangle the historical relationship that Black bodies have had to being property. Because bodily autonomy is bound up in that history. And also our ability and agency to determine our futures is bound up in that. So when we think about what it means to give women and people who are birthing people the right to make decisions about their bodies, we have to let them be the authority. And so this storytelling project gives that authority, and it takes for granted that they know what their experiences are and what they need, and we need to be listening to them.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Were you getting ready to add to that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So one of the questions that someone has is, how do Black women safeguard our mental well-being through faith? And they had a two-parter. And what should Black women do to ensure our mental well-being? That's open for whomever would like to
Read the first part of that again.
How do Black women safeguard our mental well-being through faith?
Yeah, I can answer that first part. We've been talking about that the church, that pastors need to listen to Black women, need to trust Black women. Well, Black women, we need to learn to trust ourselves, and we need to learn to listen to ourselves. And that means listening to our bodies, listening to our emotional state. And so when we feel a certain way, right, when we feel burdened, when we feel like we have done too much, or we're on our way to doing too much, listen to that. Back up. Take some rest. It's okay to rest, but listen. And as a 62-year-old woman, it has taken me a very, very long time to learn how to even recognize what my body is telling me. And so that may involve being a part of a group of other Black women of varying ages who can support one another, who can give you wisdom and insight and share from more storytelling, right? Share their experiences with you so that, oh, okay, so that's why this is happening, right? So trust ourselves as Black women and be a part of a sisterhood, nurture a sisterhood with various demographic different ages so that you can learn and share and support each other.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes.
Add to that, I also want to add to that. And so even with that, the word says we are overcome by our testimony and we are healed through our storytelling. And so sharing our stories out loud, sharing it with people, because I was just a part of a panel about 2 months ago and didn't realize that I wasn't healed from my infertility story, which happened 5 or 6 years ago, you know. So sharing that out loud and and really, like you said, trusting our bodies, and even as older and elders and seniors in the faith community, trusting the young women, you know, affirming the young women that they know and that they know what's going on, and then what they're doing is good and is right. And it's not always about traditional things and traditional laws, is what I call them. It's not always about that, you know. So keeping them affirmed and trusting us, and you all, you know, lean into your wisdom and share that, you know. And I think that'll help us like lean into that, really being healed.
Yeah. And let me say one more thing.
Sure.
Because we're talking about, the question had to do with taking care of yourself, right? So it's not just physical, right? It's also mental. You know, sometimes some of us need some medication. And we've got to learn to be okay with that. Because as much trauma, as much dis-ease that we find in our communities and among Black women, there's no way that you can have all of this weight on you and it not impact you in ways that impact your mental health, right? And so there may be an occasion, there may be a time that perhaps you need to engage with a therapist, a psychologist, a psychiatrist to help maintain the mental health, and it may involve medication, and so be okay with that. You know, Jesus is okay with that. Jesus, I mean, you know what I'm saying? He's okay. Jesus and an antidepressant, that can work wonders.
Let me tell you.
Pastor Ayers, I just wanted to, I know we have a lot of questions to get to, but this is so important because this idea of the Black superwoman and that complex is killing us.
Yes.
And when we think about what it means to take care of ourselves, we don't often even know what that looks like because everyone leans on us to save everything. And it's like, it's so freeing, I think, for Black women to realize we are not responsible for everybody because we often lose ourselves. And so I think, we just need to really lean into what it means to care for ourselves and not try to be that superwoman.
And I'm glad you said that because what we were able to see in the video of Dr. Norfleet and Cheryl, they both spoke later in that video to how they carry all of that stress and past trauma with them, even how that impacted them trying to conceive. And I don't think we think about that. Like, that impacts your ability to even to conceive, to carry, give birth, and care for. And I had never really thought about it, sunk in, until they both shared that in their story. And I think that's so important that, to your point, that we have to listen to ourselves first and trust ourselves. So when somebody tells you that's not what's wrong with you, right, you know that's what's wrong with you. So I think that's so important. And then this probably lends itself to this next question someone has. What resources does the center offer women in order to deal with the trauma they encounter in the process of becoming a mother, or even if simply going for gynecological care, maybe not even pregnant, but just going for an exam? Sometimes I've heard stories of how people felt they were treated, just even trying to get a well woman exam, right? So maybe you can speak to what the center offers, how you walk people through that process.
Okay, I can start it. Ms. Jones can end it for us. So part of that, like one of the main things we offer is doula care. We consider ourselves to be community doulas because we know now doula is like this new fantasized thing that, well-to-do women have, and everybody can afford it. That's the first thing, but it doesn't mean that everybody don't need it. So part of what we offer, again, is full spectrum doula services, and that's wherever they need us at. And the unique thing about it is we hold them for 13 months after the care. So that's through infertility, again, abortion, postpartum. We're there 13 months after that goes because I understand. So it's really important to me because I have 3 little ones, 5, 3, and 1, and so I have a village, and it's still hard with a village. So I imagine the birthing folks that we serve don't always have that village, and so we make it important to be that village for them. So it's not always about like after they had the baby or after they had the termination procedure. It's about what happens after that. So sometimes it's, I can't work because birthday or whatever was long or it was hard, and so I need help with bills. I need help with diapers. I just need somebody to talk to. You know, I may need to get out of this house and we need somewhere to go. And so right after the baby or whatever, it's that 13 months that we have identified through our data that's where Black folks need us the most, or Black birthing folks need us the most, is that. So the doula service is one of the main things. And inside of that doula service, you are connected to all of the other vetted resources that we have within our organization. And so we are the women that we serve, or the folks that we serve at the Afia Center. So somebody knows somebody that can help somebody.
Right. I was going to say, aside from just doing birth work at the Afia Center, we understand that we take the entire lived experiences of Black folk inside of the Afia Center. So our work with folk don't just start when they get pregnant and they intend to go full term, or they intend to terminate somewhere in the middle. Because we are so grounded in the community that we serve. Like, people may not know us, but trust me, the community know us. Like, we were feeding people before COVID. We were helping folk with housing before COVID. We are grassroots organizers. I'm a grassroots organizer. I'm just the ED by proxy, right? Somebody needed to be it, so I'm it. But I'm a grassroots organizer, and so I'm connected to the folk that we serve, and so we make ourselves available. I think when you talk about resources are good if people don't know how to get them. So we also provide lots of information. We stay connected so that we can provide people with information so that they know when they're not receiving the services that they need. And we position ourselves as experts on the things that we do so that folk will trust what we say and trust and go where it is that we go. We stay connected to Black folk. Like, we had this other girl doing some data stuff for us, but I knew that wasn't going to work, because my heart was set on having a Black woman to collect our data. Yes. And I wasn't going to rest until we got that. And so that's what we do, too. So we stay connected. I think more than anything, the Afia Center is connected. And there's one thing that we really haven't lifted up here when we're talking about this, and we're talking about all folk. Like, at the Afia Center, we thought it was very important that we not leave folk living with HIV out of our conversation.
Yes, right.
I sit in these spaces all of the time, and we talk about birthing, and we talk about reproductive rights, and we talk about reproductive health, but we rarely talk about what that looked like for folk living with HIV. Because for folk living with HIV, they too deserve the birth of their choice. They too deserve the relationships of their choice. They too deserve all of these things, and we can't keep leaving them out of these conversations. And like, as Deandra says all the time, she don't even like for us to say "and women with HIV," because we don't. We say just like folk, period. Right. So providing a safe space is what we do for folk. So if someone is living with HIV who want to birth, those folk will literally just call us. For folk who are living with HIV and they want to terminate a pregnancy, they literally will call us. And you know why they call us? Because they know that we're going to hold them safe. And so that's what we do more than anything. We don't have a lot of money. Thank God for COVID. Folk got real guilty and stuff. You know, George Floyd thing happened. White folks got real guilty and started throwing out money, right? So we took it because we know our people was going to need it. So because of that, we have more than we've ever had. So more people see us. But we are the same organization. I'm the same ED running around in Chuck's T-shirts and jeans and a blue jean jacket, having anything change. You know, we are that same people. So don't just jump on when a thing happened, but being a resource in the community all of the time. Those are the things that make the difference, and that's what we do. And our resources don't just start with this one thing. It is all those things.
Thank you for that. And this is a question for someone who says people talk about and forever aunt. How do we shift the narrative around defining womanhood as giving birth to and raising children?
I could start, but I think this is a big question that we all could probably contribute to. One of the things I really appreciate about that idea of the forever aunt is it calls up the concept of other mothering that Black women have done for ages. And I remember I was a community child, and I knew I could not act up down the street because there would be somebody to come correct me. And she might not have children of her own, or she might be someone who is, just a person who cares about all the children in the community. And so I think fondly about that term. I know some people are ambivalent about auntie and that idea, but I think that it calls up a tradition in a community. I know it might sound cliche now, but, it does take a village. And this idea that we can raise people and bring people up in an anti-Black world alone is a myth. Yeah. And it's a real wishful thinking, because we need all hands on deck. But I think more importantly, what this also speaks to, and this is why, in addition to thinking about reproductive justice, we talk about kind of gynecological justice, and thinking about what it means that long before you make it into the hospital to deliver a child, there's a whole sum of experiences you had that have shaped and poised you for the treatment you receive when you have your child. And we don't talk about that. The harmful, invasive annual exams, the dismissal of concerns around, different gynecological problems, or even when you are diagnosed with a long-term health issue or fibroids, that there's a way that you're treated in a dismissive way if you're a Black person. So we need to expand this idea of who's implicated in this conversation, because it's not just people who are having children. It's everyone who's subject to the medical industrial complex. And so I'll end there.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for that.
I would like to add, so for those that don't know who the forever aunt is, the forever aunt is the aunt who chose not to have a child by choice. And the forever aunt is the one who normally undergirds the family children, the nieces and nephews, that can give the nieces and nephews the opportunities and experiences that mamas can't, give. I had a forever aunt until she decided to go adopt. She was able to, and the funny thing is, the forever aunt in the church world is everybody's auntie, not by blood, because she can do it. She don't have that responsibility. And so also part of that in the church community or faith-based community, the forever aunt is always looked down on as a woman because she's not having children. And a lot of times it's not because they can't, it's just because they choose not to, And so I would like to see in faith-based community that, those forever aunties are respected, because they are beyond just being able to have children. I know a lot of successful forever aunts, and they actively choose to not have children. So we have to change that narrative that women are only good for childbearing.
Yeah, can I say something about that?
Yes.
Particularly as a faith community, I want us to really be cognizant of how we buy into these notions of white supremacy and patriarchy, right? Because when you, in the early 19th century, there was this thing called the cult of true womanhood, right? So, which was largely about white women, and what makes you a woman, right, is that you do these certain things. And part of what you do is you have children, right? And you stay at home, and Black women never fit into that anyway. But we have adopted this notion that to be a woman is to be able to check these certain boxes. And if you don't check those boxes, then you're not a real, true woman. That's not our heritage. That's not our history. But we bought into it. And we have to, I want to encourage us to get away from that, right? And to recognize that that is about patriarchy. That is about white supremacy culture. We are different folk, and we need different relationships. We show up differently, and we need to be respected for our choices.
Thank you for that. Yes.
There's one place that Forever Aunts is happening that we are not talking about. And by the way, I had a Forever Aunt. She may have been everybody's aunt at church, but Aunt Lydia was my aunt. She was mine. And anybody that knows she was mine. But yeah, and it's everything that you say. She chose not to parent. And even when my mother was transitioning, she called my mother and said, "You can go. She's gonna be all right. She mine now." Like she's for real mine. So I did have a Forever Aunt, and it meant a lot because she was able to do things that my mother would not have been able to do. But there is a community that we're not talking about Forever Aunts or mothers or whatever, and that's real. It is in the LGBTQ community, but most specifically in the trans community. I am seeing. I didn't know we were going to talk about this. I didn't get her permission to use her name. But I have a darling baby in the trans community, and that baby, not only does she take care of other young women of trans experience, and she's their aunt, and she's their mother, and she's their whatever. A couple of years ago, she sent her first baby off to college, who was another young trans girl, and she provided home for them, spaces for them. She's now taking care of her children, her sisters, her biological sister's children, who her biological sister was sick, and she's now transitioned, and she's taking care of them, and she's doing an amazing job. She was doing an amazing job before, but that's a community where we're kind of missing the mark, because if it was not for these folk taking in these children, especially children of trans experience, they would be dead, or they would be sick, or they would have HIV, or they would be untreated, or they would be in jail. All these things because they can't necessarily get a job, right? They should, but we still kind of caught up in stuff we shouldn't be caught up in. And the church, sometimes the community of faith is not that welcoming for them also. So I just wanted to lift that, because that is where I see it now like I have never seen it before, and that is in that community.
And there's an onslaught. I mean, we would be remiss if we did not bring up the government's attempt to limit people's gender expression, and the fact that they are deputizing and giving license to people in child protective services to go into homes and to disrupt people's own safety and their development of their identity. That is intertwined with reproductive justice. That's the work that we also need to raise up, because this is a holistic issue, and it's about making sure that everyone has the right to grow and become a fully realized person in a safe way, in correspondence to their identity and outside of a white supremacist framework. And so I really appreciate you, Ms. Marsha, bringing that up, because those communities are often not included in these conversations.
No, and I think that's what's so powerful about the conversation, because we need to expand it, and we need to be able to be open and to, back to what you said, Dr. Session, to do justice, right? That's to have right relationships with ourselves and with one another, and there's no distinction with that.
That's right.
So thank you for that, and thank you for expounding on that. So here's another question. So we want to jump back into this again. Somebody wants to know, what are some things we can do in the Black community to better support mothers who are suffering from postpartum depression, especially when you're expected to bounce back and resume life as usual?
I'ma say, we have to care. We have to care for them. We have to. So I can only speak for me, right? My last baby, I had to learn how to let my village. So we call on the village, we say we have a village, but oftentimes because of the superwoman complex, we don't allow village to village. And so the damage comes sometime in faith-based communities because we have an older generation that wants to offer help that I don't need. And so a part of that is, in order to help, we have to figure out, like, what is the help that you need? And we have to be able to help them where they need help at, versus coming in and, well, let me hold the baby. No, that's not what I need. I need somebody to hold me sometime. I need somebody to let me cry and vent and not tell me, well, it's all right. That's what you asked for these kids, and this is what you're supposed to do. You know, you can still get up and cook for your husband and take care of them kids. That's what women, no, that's not what I need. So it's about learning the need, loving on them, and taking care of their mom. The kids are going to be all right if mama is all right. So let's help mama in postpartum. We tell our mamas, our birthing folks during postpartum period, we adopt that 40 days do nothing rule. For 40 days, you do nothing. If the house is dirty, and Miss Marshall was my doula, Kiana was my doula, Miss Helen was my doula, and they made sure I did not do anything. And it was hard for me because I wasn't used to that. And remind you, I have a great village, but I didn't allow them to village. But the only reason I didn't allow them to village is because the way I see how we show up for the birthing folks. So it's almost like you feel like you have to. I felt like I needed to cook and clean and do this. No, I allow my village to village, but you have to gain trust with the person that you're helping. And so even in the faith-based community, we have to love on them and affirm these mamas. When mama is okay, then these babies will be okay.
I want to recommend a book for every Black woman that is listening. I want to recommend it for the Afia Center, that maybe you all can even do some book studies on it with your women. It is a book by Dr. Shaniqua Walker Barnes, and it's called Too Heavy a Yoke, The Burden of Black Women and Strength. I think that's the subtitle of it. But Too Heavy a Yoke. And she talks about all of these things that you just mentioned, about often there may be people that want to help us, but because we as Black women, we have been socialized and theologized and hoodwinked to believe that we have to do everything for ourselves, right? And so we say no. And so there, she talks about, like, there's a difference between being a strong Black woman, like that trope, right? And a Black woman who is strong, right? And so I want to encourage everybody to get that book. And read it for yourself, because our minds have to change about the way we see ourselves, right? And then our minds have to change. When we change the way we see ourselves, then we can then begin expecting something different or asking for something different from other people, and learning how to say, no, right? And having that confidence in us, in our no.
And can I just make a plug for rest?
Yes, you can. For all of us.
Well, and I was thinking, as Pastor Sessions also brought up a book, I want to recommend Tricia Hersey's The Nap Ministry.
Oh, yeah.
She is she has her whole kind of ministry of rest. And what she says is rest is resistance, because we often think that our value is bound up in what we produce, but that's a white supremacist and slavery kind of framework. And it means, like, the idea that Black people who built this country could be called lazy. And it's like, really? You know, this idea that we are always working, never getting the credit, we need to rest. And Black women especially, because we are out here working and working ourselves into the ground, to early deaths, into all of these problems, and we're not taking care of ourselves. And one of the things that I know from even me, we don't often even know what care looks like.
Right.
Because we either have thought ourselves unworthy of it, or we haven't ever received it. And so I think we really need to tap into rest and care. I'm preaching to myself, because I know it's a lot of work there is to do. The work of justice is a lot of work. So I know that it's a hard thing to do, but it really is an act of resistance.
So this has been an amazing conversation. As I said before, we hope it's just the beginning of many conversations we can continue to have. So I want to just kind of wrap it up with, maybe we can just take maybe a minute to, like, last minute thoughts. You sound like you were already on your last minute thought. So DeAndre, let's start with you, Dr. Stacy, Ms. Marshall, and with Dr. Session. What last thing do you want to leave with our audience? What would you want them to take away from the conversation tonight?
First thing first, I'm always say is to trust Black women. We have to trust Black women, love Black women, affirm Black women, and that's why I'm gonna leave it in. Oh, and I'm gonna adopt the nap ministry for myself. I like that.
Yeah, she's on Instagram. You can find her.
I'm gonna do that today.
Yeah, you get your life. She'll tell you reading social media, go lay down. Because we need to be resting. So I think one of my takeaways is your voice matters. Our voices matter as Black women, as gender-expansive Black people, as people who are most marginalized, and we really need to harness the power of our voices because there's a lot of vision, theory. We are so knowledgeable and so wise, but we don't get that credit, so we need to lift up our own voices.
Yes, thank you.
One of the things that I'll take away tonight, one, I probably need to incorporate the NAP ministry right now because I've yawned 3 times. But today was the day with my spiritualist, so I don't necessarily have like that's my counseling or whatever. So today was with my spiritualist, and she just had me laid out. I just can't do nothing but sleep when she leaves. But anyway, that and how that broad spectrum of us, of Black folk, Black people. That's what I have experienced today, and to not be so quick to limit us, who we are, and how we show up. And this conversation went everywhere and stayed on Black folk, Black women. So I really love that. And just sitting in a church doing it, because I'm a church, I may not always act like it, but I'm a church girl too. I am a church girl at heart. I love the Lord and I love church. And so hopefully because of who you all are, people will adapt this and allow this to happen more often.
I want to end my comments this way. I want to share this story that many of us know of what happened with the first humans. So you may remember when they decided to eat of the fruit that God told them not to eat of. When they did it and they saw that they were naked, they went and hid. That was about shame. And that's what we do as a faith community all too often. That's why people don't come to us. That's why, and we want them to go to you, but we don't want them to go to you because they can't come to us. We don't want that to be the reason, because they are living with shame. When you talk about abortion, shame. When you talk about HIV, shame. When you talk about pregnancy before marriage, shame. And all this shame stuff. But God went looking for the humans to show them there's no need to be ashamed. God came, he went looking for them. And then, but because of their shame, God made them some clothes. Okay, I'll help you with that. I'll help you with your shame, right? But I want to be in relationship with you. And so that's what I'm talking to the churched folk out here. I'm talking to the clergy out here who have guilted people, who have put shame on people because they didn't do stuff you thought they ought to do the way you thought they ought to do it. And so now they're living and they're hiding. They're not able to be their true, authentic selves. They're diminished. And so I want to encourage us to stop shaming people.
Thank you for that, Dr. Session, DeAndrea, Dr. Stacy, Miss Marsha. It was a pleasure to be with you in this moment, just to sit and to learn. So for your wisdom, your witness, and yes, your ministries, we give God thanks. And so we thank you for joining us. Also, we have just a couple of announcements, so don't turn away, because we have the Afia Center has 2 things coming up we want you to be aware of. And I believe we have a digital asset that will be on the screen that will hopefully, Dr. Stacy is a little small, so you may want to speak to the summit.
Yes.
And and we're dropping the link in the chat so you can mention what the sign up is for.
That's right. So on this, you'll see that we have a few events coming up. One is our Reproductive Justice Summit, and that is a centerpiece of the Afia Center, and so we're really excited about that. Also, our second phase that we mentioned about the storytelling circles are going to be happening, and they're going to feature formerly incarcerated individuals. So please, 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 if you know of someone or if you yourself are formerly incarcerated and would like your voice to be heard, please come out for that. And then Afia Center is on all the social media sites, so we left our link in the for those. So please stay in touch.
Thank you, and you can find that link in the chat of Facebook and YouTube that will be dropping for you. And so lastly, you know Dr. Haynes does his best to bring us the best. Last night we had Reverend Dr. Dean Yolanda Pierce, who joined us, who blessed us tremendously, that set us up quite nicely for tonight. And then tonight, of course, we have the Afia Center and Dr. Sessions. So not only that, you know, we fight for justice, but you know, we also do acts of compassion. You know, Faith Formula stays on the case without giving out food, paying rent, mortgage, rental assistance. You know, the amazing work that we do here at Friendship West. As we always say, we have not been closed, we've been redeployed. So we have been out in community really serving the people for these past 2 years. We continue to do so because of your generosity. So please continue to give toward the work that we do. You know, it comes out, it comes in, and it goes back out. You see the ways to give on your screen. You can text to give, scan the barcode to give on Givelify, as well as online, as well as the church app. And as we always say, if you're still old school, you can mail it in too. 2020 West Wheatland Road, Dallas, Texas 75232, or you can drop it off at the same location. Thank you for joining us tonight. We hope that you stay with us. Look forward to more information from Friendship West, our gender justice team, as we'll continue to have this dialogue, and we'll talk about the ways in which we begin to be advocates for policies, because we have to deal with the broken structures that create all of these needs that we're talking about tonight. So we too have to be educated, and that's what we started doing tonight. We need to be educated on what we're talking about so we can be strong advocates. Definitely in Austin when we kick off in January, and you'll hear more about that through the summer and into the fall. And again, we thank Dr. Haynes for opening up this space and allowing women to be at the center of the conversation and to guide the conversation. We definitely thank him for his allyship and his consistency, Dr. Sessions. We can speak to that. Over decades, he's not new to it. He's true to it. And I want to give him his props for that, because not many black clergy, especially with his platform, preach and teaches what he does. So we thank him for his boldness and his courage and his prophetic witness on tonight. Thank you. Be blessed. And we look forward to seeing you this Sunday. If you registered, if you didn't register, hope we'll see you the following Sunday. So be blessed and rest well. God bless you.
We praise God for this impactful experience and for your joining us during it. Check us out on social media, and please like, share, and subscribe at Friendship West. Then go to www.friendshipwest.org to find out more about this marvelous movement. Find out how to participate through sharing your prayers, sharing your offerings or monetary gifts, or sharing and investing your time volunteering with this difference-making ministry. For you who are viewing as visitors, you can share that you were here by taking time to text FWVIZ to the number 28950. For those who want this time that you are visiting to be the last time that you're a visitor, you can become part of our fabulous family of faith, either by calling 469-498-0210 or by emailing joinus@friendshipwest.org with your first name, your last name, and your cell number. Either way, we look forward to hearing from you. We're so excited that you are here. Until next time, blessings on you.
West Baptist Church.